Ah, it's really hard to give a talk with I'm the only one on the screen. I did that for 2 or 3 of them, but it's really hard. Okay, so you may wonder, what exactly are the precepts and what does it mean to receive them? And that's what I'd like to talk about today. You might think we already do that in the full moon ceremony. And we do, that's true. But attending a ceremony is not a complete involvement in it. You may think about the meaning of the various precepts, and you may even bring them up in conversations in Dokusan or in group discussions. But there is no sense of personal responsibility for them before the ceremony. So you literally begin to play with them with the unspoken idea that you can drop them as you please. So you're interested, but you don't feel bound by them. Here's Harvey wants to join in. Okay, Harvey, sit down. It would be as different in involvement as if you attended a wedding ceremony of a friend, or if instead you married the friend in the ceremony. That would be the difference. You either attend the ceremony or you literally take part in the most important part of the ceremony. But in the Bodhisattva ceremony, you enter the lineage of the ancestors or those who brought the teachings forward to us, and formally you become one with the precepts and the vow. Choice is what makes the difference. If you choose to receive the precepts in a formal ceremony, you may feel so much responsibility about it that you actually have some stage fright before the ceremony begins. But don't worry, because a little stage fright is a good thing. It means you are ready to study the precepts as a way to penetrate deep ignorance about the self. And you're ready to look past self-deception and let yourself open to all possibilities. In other words, you're on the edge of an adventure towards a new understanding of the meaning of self. Now, you can consider the precepts from different points of view. For example, in the precept of do not kill, you can consider a different perspective, such as, instead of thinking, should I or should I not kill this mosquito, you might instead ask further, well, who can kill? What can be killed? And what does kill mean? What is a lie? Who is it that steals? What can be stolen? Who slanders? Who is there to be slandered? And who can slander the 3 treasures when 3 treasures isn't something you can hold in your hand? Questioning like this probably won't bring immediate answers, but if you asked and wondered about it many times, you can rouse your inner being to take hold of it and chew on the problem. And eventually, such kind of probing of your interior gives rise to a new perspective about self and other, about life and death, about birth. When we sit with the precepts, we're not trying to dress up in new and better clothes of the mind. We're still trying to take off the irrelevant mental ideas we've been taking on our whole lives. Usually, a thought comes and goes, but if we hang on it long enough, we start to wear it, and then it becomes flesh and blood, and finally, we begin to live it as well. So if you want to take a good look at your life and wonder about it, look at your thoughts first and see what your idea of life is, what life and death is, what birth is, and you have a better idea of the kind of world you are now creating. You can change that. So the precepts are the means to take off, one after another, piles of ideas, which also means to reconstruct physical lives as well. What we don't need, we want to let go of and see our lives as clearly unadorned as possible. This means that everyday activities, people, and relationships become new ideas and new ways to learn about reality. Eventually, the precepts themselves become unneeded as a means to study the self, and they disappear from our surface. But they have instead become flesh and blood, and we express that kind of strength by having no longer to calculate every time what we have to do and how we have to do it. We take the precepts when we're ready to focus on everyday activities as a form of practice. Practice becomes number one, and everything that follows becomes an expression of that practice. It's an expression of our understanding of practice. Before the ceremony, we were content to have a place for practice and a place for daily life, a place for ourselves, most of all, as number one. But after the ceremony, we're ready to put ourselves as number one aside and learn what else is number one in the world. We study birth, life, and death through studying the precepts, but especially we study why the self was number one for so long. We look at our inner life and see our outer life in a different way. If you harm someone, you feel harmed inside, whether we acknowledge it or not. When we look dispassionately at ourselves, if we harm someone, we become aware that the harm was far-reaching, much farther reaching than we realized, whether it was slight or not, whether it was intended or not. If we observe the inner connections to outer connections often enough, we seriously wonder what that means. Through the study of the precepts, we're more willing to discover new, unthought of perceptions of reality. Self-protection doesn't seem as necessary as before because now we trust ourselves more. We trust others more. If anyone chooses to make a Raksu and take the Bodhisattva vows, they make a momentous choice to turn their life in a new direction. The surface life remains the same, but the vows begin to show themselves to you in everyday life, rather than just on special occasions, like sitting in the zendo. As laymen and laywomen, you do not make radical changes to your lifestyle, but your perspective begins a slow and steady shift to a more realistic understanding of reality. And thank you. And do you have any questions? Peter is going to sit to the side right now because he is not able to sit up here on the cushions. So he's going to take a small sabbatical over on a chair. But if you want to ask him a question, he can stretch over here, I'm sure. There you are. Pull over, huh? Pull over here. And Harvey's sitting with Peter this morning. It's like she knows he's having trouble sitting, so she's sitting with him on his lap. Aren't you? Good girl. Do you have any questions about the precepts or about Jukai? Chris?
Can I ask Harvey a question?
Go ahead.
Harvey, have you done Jukai?
She's thought about it. We actually have thought about making a little Raksu for her and having a special ceremony. We are thinking of it. If anyone has a pet they would like to have. John.
I found it so interesting, your example of the mosquito, because this specific instance is very common to me. You know, I have 4 kids, and I'll have a kid come into my room and say, "Dad, there's a spider, you know, I need you to take care of it." You know, and so, you know, they know I won't kill anything, but at the same time, they mock me about it. And they're like, you know, we're getting bit to death by all kinds of animals in here, and you don't even care, you know, all you care about is them and us, you know. And so, you know, it's just, it's really interesting because it does, when you start to really take stock of every life and of, it is very, it's just really, it just, that instance alone just kind of is a bubble over all of the precepts for me, because like lying, like let's say there are things that I can't tell my children per se, and so I might tell them something sideways different, and I often feel very like, so malleability. What about with intent? So it's like, take the mosquito. It's my intent. I don't want to kill, but at the same time, I don't want my kids to get encephalitis. So, it's like these, is it the intent of your wanting to be skilled and right that is the guiding principle? Or is it a more stringent, we should try and stick to it? I'm always playing with it. Maybe the fact that I'm playing with it is what's important, but
Yeah, that's the important thing, John, is the fact that you're thinking about it, whereas before you probably didn't even think about it. Most people would just smack the mosquito and assume they have a right without even questioning it, without even thinking about it. I've had times when I've had a mosquito sitting on my arm and I look at it and I think, no, I can't kill it. And I go through the whole business and I brush it away and then it comes back and bites somewhere else where I can't get it. So
I know I have this,
it is.
blowing technique. I try and use
I
the blowing technique to blow them off, but they still
Well,
come back.
there is a kind of incense that repels mosquitoes, and we used it in Japan a lot. It's not a particularly nice smelling one, but it does. Once it fills the room, the mosquitoes just they fall asleep on the floor, and they don't wake up until the next morning. And then you just brush them out. They get up and fly out. So there are different ways, but again, it's everybody's. If there's a disease of encephalitis going around, I think I might be more careful about having them in the house with if I had children. So yeah, I it's a the question. The real thing that's happening is that you are questioning reality in a different way, as if you're involved in it, and rather than just a bystander watching it. And that's the important thing in this. So I think, like, for example, lying when you have to lie to your children because you can't tell them something, I think it's the intent to deceive, which is, to the harm of another person, which is the real problem with lying. But again, the question is ask yourself who's lying and who can lie and who is there to lie to, and just a lot of things that we take for granted and assume are true without even thinking about it. So it's a chance to question everything about reality that you're in and not take any of it for granted. Not the children you're talking to, not the need to do it, not the person who's doing it, not to take anything for granted, but to question everything is the important thing. It's not, we're not trying to be virtuous and good people. We're trying to understand ourselves, our reality, and our relationship to it.
I feel like it also helps us to um, step out of our cloud, our delusion every day, because normally we would just go about, doing what, it makes us take stock of moments, of the moment with the mosquito, the moment with what am I about to say, the moment with what am I about to do, rather than just it coming forth and not, taking the time to actually take stock of what we're actually doing and how skillfully we're doing it. I think is, even if it doesn't always come out to be exactly right, at least we're taking those moments.
Yeah. So it also, like in slander, we feel it's okay to talk about people who really are bad, but that's a kind of slander too. It doesn't matter, like it doesn't matter how bad or good the person is. It's just the idea of intent to harm that is the real problem in it, if it's there. Anyway, thank you, John. That's a good point. The precepts take on a whole new idea, I think, if you have children. Mike.
First, I always apologize when I smash a bug in my house. I'm sorry, I don't like bugs in my house, so I apologize and then I kill them. But the precepts, they're not rules as much as guides, are they? They're more to kind of keep reminding us what we're trying to strive for.
They start out being rules and they become guides and then they disappear. That is, they become us.
But you never forget them, even after you no longer think about them. I mean, they're always there. I mean, you know, because life keeps throwing hand grenades at us, and we were always like, okay, you know, oh, you know, I overreacted to this, or I didn't do that this way. I know better than that. So you never really lose them, do you? You just kind of put them aside and say, okay, they're there, and I'll remind myself that I'm still need to be aware of these.
I think, Mike, that more or less what happens is that they become you because they were you to begin with. They were you in written word, and then they become you as body and mind. And then you do think about them, but you think about them as you, not as something outside of you. So when you act, you don't have to say, now what should I do? You know what to do. When that happens, then you have a much stronger sense of where the precepts are.
But that's what I kind of try to do, but it's still, the old Mike still just jumps up. Like, I will tell you real quickly here, I got dropped out of this meeting by Zoom, and it's been doing that to me a lot. And I got real angry, and I'm glad my microphone was off and I was disconnected, because I broke every rule in the book. And then I calmed down and tried to finally got the connection back up and stuff. But you like, I guess what I'm saying is, yes, they're part of you, but you still remind yourself that they are part of you in a sense. I mean, they don't become automatic. You still are aware of that. You need to use that in your life. Is that correct? Or do you actually think it goes away and it's automatic?
No, I don't think it ever goes away. I think it just becomes like so close that you don't have to even think about them. You just begin to live them.
So they just become your nature.
They become your nature because they were your nature to begin with.
We just forgot it.
Yeah.
It's just, we forget that we are that way.
Yeah, we forget that we actually are the way we're practicing. And that's why we're practicing, because somehow we've gotten away from it.
Yes. Okay.
You're welcome.
There's a question in chat, by the way.
What is it? 2 participants raised their hand. Who is it? Who raised their hand? Oh, Rachel. Huh? In chat? Yeah.
It isn't my question
Daniel.
in chat. It's a different, there are 2 people with a yellow hand, but there's a question in chat, which is separate.
Okay. Would you like to go ahead?
Okay. I just wanted to say, because it's a different perspective, which is almost exhilaration, but the quiet joy I have when we spoke about my taking Jukai. And I studied many years with a primary teacher who did not perform that ceremony for reasons. And an everyday Zen became a key, essential aspect of living my life. And I never thought about it, but over the last months and when we spoke and you mentioned that, I had such joy. I mean, it was just so, startling to me. It's as though it was an opportunity to, or I don't want to say opportunity, a moment of confirmation in a sense. And it's just kind of surprising to me because I had not previously, ever thought about it because it hadn't been done at the center I was at. And I'm just so happy about it. And it's a different reaction, but I just thought I would like to share that.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Peter, the question from Daniel says, why did you and Peter take Jukai? Was that right? Daniel? Yeah, he says, whoops, wrong one.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, what
Yeah,
events
we're
and choices led to you making that commitment? Peter, you want to speak?
Sure.
Actually, you didn't take Jukai.
Well, actually, I didn't take Yukai.
Peter didn't because he was ordained straight away.
But I got a Roxu anyway.
But he was ordained with Dan Welch in a ceremony by Suzuki Roshi. So it was, he didn't do that first. He just leaped into the priest ordination.
So you skipped
as-
a grade?
He skipped a grade, yes.
It was, you know, I entered the officers college, what do they call it?
And
ROZC.
ROTC, yeah.
ROZC, Zen Center.
Right, yeah. Okay, anyway, so I took Jukai because in a way we were in Tassajara for a year, and then we came up to the city, and they said, well, they're gonna have a Jukai, and you want to make a Roxu because Yoshida Roshi had come to teach everybody how to make it. So we sat around, made Roxus. I didn't have a clue what we were doing. I was just making the Roxu because that's what everybody was doing. And at the end of it, we just had a ceremony. And I actually hadn't thought about it so much, but when I did it, I wish somebody had explained it more to me, when I did it. But we were given our Roxus by Suzuki Roshi and had I think there was about 15 or 16 of us in the first one in Tassajara, no, in city center. So yeah, that was mine. I just did it without thinking about it so much because I just assumed this is what we did because we were sitting and now we make a Roxu. And so I was just part of a group doing it and we all did it together. And I'm very glad I did it with Suzuki Roshi because at that point I was very happy to do any kind of ceremony with him. So yeah, anyway, that was that. Nothing more than that. Just we sat and then we made a Roxu. And Peter at that point was making an Okesa. And so I started making an Okesa also, but I received the Roxu first. So that was it.
So my first Roxu was machine made, someplace in Japan.
Yes, his robes came from Japan because at that point we weren't making anything. And then we started making the Okesas, and that was different. It was really quite different. But
I'm excited for the sewing to come back around because my Roxu is currently in disrepair. So I'm ready for some. I'm ready for a little time at the table to repair my Roxu.
Both my straps have loosened.
Yes, mine are bad.
Yeah, mine are too. I have to repair them. So
I just have to throw a comment in. I didn't decide to take Jukai. Peter looked at me and we were talking and having a meeting. He goes, Mike, you're going to take Jukai, aren't you? And it's like,
sure.
What is that? Okay. And I had no choice to make a decision. He just pointed at me and said, you're taking it. And I'm like, yes, sir.
Yeah, we just, whenever we think someone's ready, we just tell them. But if people have a choice, of course, always. So
I don't regret it. I just didn't know what I was getting into.
I don't think anybody really does. And nobody really understands how much their life changes afterwards. But it's not like, for example, Chris, did you find any real change afterwards?
Sort of. Yeah. It was like just, I don't know. I think I thought about stuff more. I was actually reflecting that the precepts are, to a certain extent, similar to forms around the Zendo or service in that practicing them and working with them, it's a method to orient our attention on where we are and our life in a different way, in a more, sincere or purposeful way. So we think about what we're doing, and we think about who we are and what's going on more, I think, after taking the precepts. And I think, yeah, I remember you sent me something that was like, it's better to take the precepts and break them than not to take them at all. And I was like,
So,
but isn't that the point? And it's like, well, it is better to take them and then break them, and then
yes,
not to take them at all.
yes,
Because then when you break them, you feel bad, and it sort of helps like get you to practice them and think about them more than if you were just like, nah, that's some stuff serious practitioners do. I'm just here for the incense.
actually, that's true, Chris. Exactly true. And that's literally what happens. You get pulled into thinking about things way more than you would have normally. And I see this all the time when people take the precepts and then they start having difficulty with, well, I don't know about this bug, or or killing, or I can't eat meat, or I do eat meat, or whatever. And it's just a way to make people think about their life, really think about it. So it's different from being a priest, because your whole life changes when you become a priest, but your life doesn't really change as a layperson, because you still have your lay life in a strong way. So priests will often have what looks like a lay life, but it's not really the same as a lay life. And the difference is that it's our life, but it's not our life, and we learn that, we find that. But lay people always still think, this is my life, this is my life. And a priest gives up thinking like that. And that's one of the bigger differences, whether they wear lay clothes or not. Yeah. John.
I just wanted to say that for me, the attention to the precepts and taking Jukai and really making attention to the precepts part of your life is kind of similar to those first times that you meditate as well. Like when I teach somebody to meditate and they tell me about their experience afterwards, oftentimes they'll just say, well, it was just, I just kept, there's just these thoughts. I kept, paying attention to these thoughts that were coming through. I didn't really get to meditate. And I tell them that that is exactly what you're looking to do when you first start to meditate, because in your daily life, those thoughts, and they just come and go, they're untethered, and they just move their way through, and you don't even really have any attention to them. But when you sit and you meditate, you actually, for the first time, see those thoughts come and go, and you bring your attention to them, which is the first step. And I feel like that's the same thing with the precepts, is that before paying attention to the precepts, you're just doing that same thing, except with your actions and your words and everything else, rather than beyond your thoughts. And with the precepts, it finally helps you come and bring attention to, oh, this is my action, and this is maybe the result of my action, whether it be karmic or immediate or otherwise. And so for me, that was a big thing, is drawing my attention to my daily actions, my daily words, and things like that, much like my meditation on the pillow.
Yeah. Thank you, John. That's well put. Anybody else have anything? Sandy?
Hi. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. When I took the precepts, at first I read them a lot, and then I ended up pinning a copy of them on a board above my art table. And so I thought I would see them more and be more aware of them that way. And it didn't quite work that way. They just kind of sat there. And then as things started happening, I would think, oh, the precepts, I need to go back and look at the precepts again. And so I slowly became more and more aware of the precepts and of bringing them into my daily life, and to look at them, think about them. But the biggest one was when I remember when you first got your very first bug zapper, the
Yeah.
one that was able to get spiders and stuff without killing them. I thought a lot about getting something like that, because I absolutely was terrified of spiders. And now, after years and years and years of living with insects in my house, I'm kind of like Michael. I don't want them in my house. They have the whole outdoors to live in. But there's certain times that I have gotten to the point where now I've even picked up, spiders and taken them outside and actually let them go right outside my door. Whether they came back, I don't know. But there still are certain ones that I just freak out about. And I don't want to do anything except get them out of the room and out of the house. But I was surprised that I can now look at them and think about squashing them. Like I had a silverfish or some kind of black
Yeah.
bug that came
Yeah.
out from under a rug, and I was gonna zap it right there and kill it. And then I looked at it and I thought, oh, it's only a little thing, it's like slowly as the time has gone by, now I have what I consider a bird spa outside. I have 2 bird baths going. I have squirrels and birds and all kinds of, and even a bunny came in to my patio. And originally we used to keep wire down there so nothing could come in at the bottom of the gates. But now it's great, and butterflies, and it's like I can sit and live in nature divided by a screen door. And I'm really starting more and more to appreciate it. Even caterpillars, which used to just totally turn me off, now I'm happy to see the butterflies. And I see them on the plants and I see them eating, and I know that they're going to eventually turn into and become a butterfly. So it's like my perception of animals and bugs and things that are different has changed dramatically over the time. And it's because of the precepts, because of looking at do not kill in a different way. It's like if I have these angry tendencies or tendencies that make me want to just turn around and go, you're gone, they're not there that much anymore. As time has gone by, the thought of, oh, look at the little bug has replaced it. So, it's become, like you were saying, Mike, does it become a part of my life? Yes, it's the thought process has become of the actual precept has become internalized and part of my life. So that in itself comes up rather than the first instant to want to zap it always, or kill it. Because in the past, I never would have. I did terrible things when I was a kid to bugs, horrible things. And I don't even want to discuss them. They were so bad. But I've internalized it. It's become part of my life now. And I'll never look at them the way I did when I was younger. So now I look at bugs in a totally different way, and other animals too.
Yeah.
I mean, I was terrified of snakes, and I still don't like them, but it's not the same. Just don't come in my house, I won't bother you kind of feeling. But before, I used to think they were terribly horrible, disgusting creatures. They slithered and scared the life out of me.
Thank you, Sandy.
Okay, I'll leave you with those pleasant thoughts.
We'll leave it with the snakes. Does anybody else have anything to say on this? We're all done?
Jane, real quick, didn't you say at one time that Shunryu Suzuki's widow used to still smash bugs, but she apologize for them or say something about that, and you can leave it at that. Am I misunderstanding that?
She did. No, she said that in when we were talking to her one day. Somebody said, "What did she do?" And she said, "I have the fly swatter and I swat the flies, but every time I do it, I say Namo Kiebutsu, Namo Kiebutsu. I take refuge in Buddha." So yeah, she did. But the point is, you can't go by anybody else's experience. You have to feel good about what you do. And if you imitate what somebody else does, but you don't feel good doing it, then that's what you should look at. Yeah.
We shouldn't become really attached to the precepts and feel like, oh, I'm following the precepts.
No,
I'm
because
I'm
the
better than you
precepts,
are kind of person.
yeah, that's true. You can't become attached to them, because then it just becomes another rigid attitude, like a doctrine.
Because on some level, the precepts themselves are just a bit of rational delusion. I mean, I can rationalize to myself that I'm taking this spider and I'm not killing it in my house and I'm putting it outside. But if you tell an entomologist that, he's like, well, you just killed him slower because you just put him in an environment he has no idea about, and he's now
I
just going to
know.
die a horrible death being
I do
outside.
think of
You
that.
know,
I
so
actually do think of that. That you can't interfere in anyone's world or anything's world. That they have to live their own life as they do, but they're in my world when they're in the house. So yeah, all I do is put them back in their world. But then they say, "This is my world." You know,
She has me put them back.
it's true. It's true. I do not do it except when Peter's not here. I usually will say, "Peter, there's a spider in the bathtub or something. Help!" Yeah, he's less afraid of the insects than I am.
I have to tell you this story. My wife screamed one day, there's a spider in the house. Get it out of here, Michael. And I run in there, and the spider was as big as my hand. And I screamed as bad as her and said, you touch it, I'm out of here.
What kind was it?
It was a tarantula.
Oh my God.
And it was on the ceiling. And spiders don't bother me, but my late wife didn't like spiders. And so I was going to be the big brave man. And, I was going to scoop it into a cup and take it outside. I had my cup, I had a piece of paper. I saw that spider and said, heck no, I'm out of here. We let it take over, and then eventually it just wandered off. But I have to admit, that thing scared me.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you a story. When we first went to Japan, there's a big brown spider, almost as big as a tarantula. It's just longer legs. And it's in all the houses. And I didn't know that when I first got there. And the first time I saw it, I was terrified of it because it was like as big as this, sitting up on the wall. And I, of course, yelled for Peter. And the two of us were like trying to catch it. But every time we slammed something on top, it wasn't there. And at some point, it had been sitting spread out like this. And all of a sudden, I noticed it was all curled up, on the wall like this. And I realized for the first time that the spider was really scared. And that hit home more than anything else that's ever happened to me with an insect, when I literally saw that it was really scared. And we, in our efforts to catch it, ended up killing it. And that was like one of the worst experiences in my life of with an insect, when I realized that we not only terrified it, we ended up killing it. And so then we put our beds down on the floor, on those mats on the floor. And while we were lying there, one of them came walking across the floor. And I looked at it, and Peter said something to the effect of, calm down. We don't know what it wants. And we're just sitting there. And I said, okay, I'm going to make a leap of faith in this case. And we just went to sleep, and I never saw it again. And I did. I went right to sleep, and that was the end of it. I never saw another spider like that in the house after that.
You
But
sure
it
you
was
weren't?
like,
You sure you weren't visited by the ghost of the one that died?
It's very possible, but I knew I couldn't do that to that other spider. I knew that I just couldn't do it, and I was at the point where I literally could not do it. And so I just said, okay, I'll just have to take a leap of faith and hope that spider is nice. and so we just went to sleep, and the spider, like, our heads are here, and the spider's like walking around here. And that was the end of it. I never saw another one in the house after that. So
I have one more horror story. My late wife, when she was battling lupus, got a spider bite on her foot and an abscess. So I had to take her to the emergency room, and the doctor looked at that, and he turned white, grabbed her, dragged her off, and he comes back out later. He goes, I want you to know something. Your wife was bit by a brown recluse spider, and because of the lupus, she was able to fight it off. He goes, you've got to clear out your house. He goes, if it bit you, it would have killed you. And so for about 2 years, I was absolutely panicked about spiders. And it just, because she was sick with that disease, it actually prevented her from being killed by the thing because it's an autoimmune disease. And it was able to fight it. But after that, I have to admit that I didn't give spiders any quarter. They were flat and out of there, And when I became a Buddhist, I kind of calmed down and said, okay, I'm not going to worry about that anymore.
Yeah. Well, anyway, my experience taught me that insects are like people. They actually feel pain, they feel worry, they feel fear, all things that I had never considered before. And suddenly I realized they do. And therefore I had a responsibility because of that. Not because of, I'm supposed to treat them fair and whatever they are, but because we actually interchange emotions, like he was fearful and I was like fearful also. So, yeah. Think of that. Now, whenever I see a mosquito or anything, I think of that. Okay.
Okay.
Everybody finished? Shall we do service?